The sky over Washington, D.C. darkened as the enormous ship moved across the sun. People stopped in the streets, cars screeched to a halt, and for a moment, the whole city fell silent. The crystalline vessel, nearly 2 miles long, shimmered with colors humans had never seen before. Frank Collins watched from the roof of the North American Space Coalition headquarters. At 45, with graying hair and the weathered face of a career military man, he had never expected to witness first contact. His hands gripped the railing as he tried to process what he was seeing. "Commander Collins," said a voice behind him, "the President is asking for you." Frank nodded without turning around. "Tell him I'll be right there, Linda." Similar ships appeared over Beijing, Moscow, London, and other major cities. The news channels showed crowds gathering, some people crying, others praying, many just staring upward in disbelief. In the White House Situation Room, Frank sat quietly as government officials argued about how to respond. The aliens had sent a simple message in perfect English. "We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with Earth." "How do they know our language?" demanded the Secretary of Defense, a nervous man with thinning hair. "They've probably been watching us for years," Frank said. Everyone turned to look at him. "Our television broadcasts, our internet, we've been announcing our presence to the universe for decades." The President, a tall woman with steady eyes, nodded. "Commander Collins, you've been selected as our representative for the initial meeting. Your background in both military and space operations makes you uniquely qualified." Frank felt his stomach tighten. "Yes, Madam President." 3 days later, Frank stood at the base of a giant crystal staircase that had extended from the ship to the National Mall. Beside him stood Dr. Olivia Maxwell, a physicist with wild curly hair and intense brown eyes. She had been added to the welcome team at the last minute. "This is incredible," Olivia whispered, her scientific mind already racing with questions. "Their ship defies everything we know about material science." Frank just nodded, his attention fixed on the figures now descending the staircase. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer like their ships. Their eyes were large, mostly black, with small flecks of silver. They wore simple gray clothing that moved like liquid around their bodies. "Welcome to Earth," Frank said when the aliens reached the bottom of the stairs. "I am Commander Frank Collins, representing the nations of Earth." The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Nexor of the Zephyrian Collective. We have been observing your world for some time." The ambassador's voice was smooth and pleasant, but something in his tone made Frank uneasy. It reminded him of how adults sometimes spoke to very small children. Over the next few weeks, meetings continued between Earth representatives and the Zephyrians. They shared information about their society. They came from a star system 120 light-years away and had been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years. They showed images of beautiful crystal cities and technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. But Frank noticed patterns in what they shared and what they held back. "They're treating us like we're stupid," he told Olivia during a coffee break between meetings. They had become unlikely friends, the soldier and the scientist united by their suspicions. Olivia nodded, stirring her coffee absently. "Every time I ask about their propulsion system or energy sources, they change the subject. They'll tell us about their art or their music, but nothing that would help us advance." In the 3rd week, Ambassador Nexor addressed the United Nations. The entire world watched as the alien stood before human leaders. "We are pleased to begin this cultural exchange," Nexor said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We will share medical knowledge that will extend your lives, agricultural techniques that will end hunger, but some technologies must wait until your civilization matures." A representative from India stood up. "What technologies are you withholding and why?" Nexor's expression didn't change, but Frank thought he detected a hint of disdain in those alien eyes. "Your species is still divided by nations. You fight wars over resources and ideology. You're barely past burning fossil fuels," Ambassador Nexor told the assembly. "Perhaps in another millennium, you'll be ready for true galactic citizenship." Murmurs filled the room. Frank saw anger on some faces, shame on others. Later that night, Frank found Olivia in her lab at MIT. She had been recruited to study the few pieces of Zephyrian technology they had been allowed to examine. "They think we're savages," Frank said, dropping into a chair. "Did you see how Nexor talked to the UN? Like a teacher disappointed with slow students." Olivia looked up from her microscope. "What bothers me is how they dismiss our own scientific progress. Yes, they're advanced, but we've accomplished so much in just the last century. They're not here to help us grow," Frank realized. "They're here to study us, like we're an interesting primitive tribe they discovered in the jungle." The Zephyrians established an outpost in the Nevada desert. They allowed small groups of humans to visit and learn about their culture, but their living quarters remained off limits. They collected samples of Earth's plants and animals. They interviewed humans from different walks of life. 6 months after first contact, Frank attended a dinner with Zephyrian officials. After several glasses of wine, he asked the question that had been bothering him. "Why did you really come here, Nexor? What do you want from us?" The ambassador studied Frank with those unsettling eyes. "Curiosity, Commander. Your species is unusual in how quickly you've advanced despite your limitations. We document developing civilizations. It's our purpose. So we're just an entry in your database?" Frank asked, trying to keep his voice level. "A fascinating entry," Nexor replied with what might have been a smile. "But yes, perhaps in 1,000 years, when you've unified your world and outgrown your violent tendencies, we'll welcome you as equals." Frank left the dinner early. He drove straight to Olivia's lab, where he found her working late as usual. "They see us as exhibits in a zoo," he told her. "Nothing more." Olivia barely looked up from her work. "Then they're making a dangerous mistake, Frank. Because I've been studying their materials and I think I've found something they never expected us to discover." She showed him a simulation on her computer screen. "They think we're following their technological path, but human physics has taken some unique turns. There might be another way to achieve what their technology does, using principles they've overlooked." Frank watched the patterns flow across the screen. "How long until you can prove it?" Olivia's eyes gleamed with determination. "Give me 3 years. By then we'll have something that might change Ambassador Nexor's condescending attitude." Outside, the Zephyrian outpost glowed softly in the desert night. Inside their crystal walls, the aliens continued their study of primitive humanity, unaware that their subjects were beginning to solve puzzles they had never intended to share. 3 years passed since the Zephyrians arrived on Earth. Their outpost in the Nevada desert had grown into a small city. Crystal towers reached toward the sky, catching sunlight and breaking it into colors no human had names for. Human scientists, politicians, and artists visited regularly, learning what the aliens allowed them to learn. Dr. Olivia Maxwell hadn't visited the outpost in over a year. She worked in her underground lab at MIT, away from curious eyes. The room hummed with energy, as machines ran complex calculations day and night. Screens covered the walls showing equations and simulations. Paul Hughes, a broad-shouldered engineer with kind eyes, checked readings on a device in the center of the room. It looked simple from the outside, just a metal cube about 1 foot across. But inside was something revolutionary. "Power levels are stable," Paul said. "We're ready for another test." Samantha Kelly, a quantum programmer with short red hair and quick hands, nodded from her computer station. "Simulation predicts 94% success rate, better than last time." Olivia took a deep breath. "Start the sequence." The cube began to glow. The air around it seemed to bend like heat waves rising from hot pavement. A small steel ball sat on a platform 10 feet away. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ball vanished and reappeared inside a clear container connected to the cube. The 3 scientists stared in silence. Then Samantha started laughing. Paul whooped and picked Olivia up, spinning her around. "It worked," he shouted. "It actually worked." Olivia couldn't stop smiling. Not just worked, it performed better than the simulation predicted. The quantum variance is almost 0. What they had created wasn't a teleportation device exactly. It created a temporary connection between 2 points in space-time. The connection allowed matter to move from one point to another without traveling through the space between. The Zephyrians had similar technology, but achieved it through gravity manipulation. Olivia's team had found a completely different approach. "We need to tell Commander Collins," Olivia said, reaching for her phone. At that same moment, in a government office in Washington, D.C., Frank Collins stared at satellite images spread across his desk. They showed Zephyrian ships in Earth orbit, more ships than had been there the day before. Colonel Greg Patterson stood by the window, arms crossed. He was younger than Frank by 10 years, with a military buzz cut and watchful eyes. "That's the third fleet movement this month," Greg said. "Something's got them spooked." Frank nodded. "And they're not telling us what." Over the past 6 months, the Zephyrians had been acting differently. More ships arrived in orbit. At the same time, many Zephyrians left the Nevada outpost. When asked, Ambassador Nexor claimed it was a routine rotation of personnel. Frank's phone rang. When he saw Olivia's name, he answered immediately. "We did it," she said without greeting. "The space-time connector works. We can transport objects instantly over short distances." Frank's heart raced. "How short?" 10 feet in the lab, but the principles are sound. Scaling up is just an engineering problem now. "I'm coming to you," Frank said. "And Olivia, don't tell anyone else about this yet." Frank drove to the airport with Greg, explaining Olivia's breakthrough on the way. They flew to Boston and reached MIT by evening. In the lab, Olivia showed them multiple successful tests. The cube could now move objects almost 30 feet away. The Zephyrians achieved similar results by bending space with artificial gravity, Olivia explained. "We're taking a different approach, creating a quantum tunnel through space-time itself. They probably never explored this method because their physics developed differently than ours." Frank watched another steel ball disappear and reappear. "Could this be used for space travel?" Paul nodded excitedly. "Theoretically, yes. Distance shouldn't matter to the quantum connection. Once we learn to aim precisely over longer ranges, we could jump directly to orbit, maybe even to Mars." Greg whistled. "No wonder you wanted to keep this quiet." "That's not the only reason," Frank said. He showed them the satellite images. "The Zephyrians are acting strange. More ships arriving, personnel leaving Earth. I think they're preparing for something." Samantha frowned. "Like what?" "That's what I intend to find out," Frank said. "Tomorrow I'm meeting with Ambassador Nexor." The next day, Frank entered the crystal halls of the Zephyrian outpost. The building always made him uncomfortable. The walls seemed alive, shifting subtly when you weren't looking directly at them. Nexor received him in a room with no furniture, just glowing crystal formations. Rising from the floor, the ambassador looked thinner than Frank remembered, his shimmering skin less bright. "Commander Collins," Nexor said. "This is an unexpected visit. I've noticed changes in your fleet positions," Frank said, not bothering with small talk. "More ships arriving, more of your people leaving Earth. Why?" Nexor's large eyes blinked slowly. "Fleet movements are routine. Nothing that would concern primitive, that is, developing species." The slip didn't escape Frank's notice. "We may be primitive by your standards, Ambassador, but we're not stupid. Something has changed. You're afraid of something." "Your species lacks context for interstellar politics," Nexor said dismissively. "Focus on your development. We'll handle galactic matters." The meeting ended with no real answers. As Frank left the outpost, he passed a group of Zephyrians loading equipment onto a transport. They worked quickly, almost frantically. That night, Frank met with Olivia's team again. They shared a quiet dinner in Olivia's apartment, away from listening devices. "They're definitely preparing to leave," Frank said. "But why? And why not tell us?" "Maybe it's not about us at all," Samantha suggested. "Maybe there's something else out there they're worried about." As if answering her question, Olivia's computer beeped. She had been running a program to decode Zephyrian communications, something she wasn't technically authorized to do. "I got something," she said, opening her laptop. "It's a fragment of a transmission between their ships." The others gathered around. The screen showed translated text, most of it fragmented, But 3 words stood out clearly. "They're coming, prepare." Silence fell over the room. Greg was the first to speak. "Who's coming?" Frank stared at the words on the screen. "I don't know, but I think we need to speed up your research, Olivia. How quickly can you scale up your device?" Olivia exchanged looks with Paul and Samantha. "With proper funding and resources, maybe 2 months to reach orbit. 6 to reach Mars distance. You have 1 month," Frank said. "Whatever the Zephyrians are running from, I want us to be ready when it arrives." Outside Olivia's apartment window, stars filled the night sky. Somewhere among them, something was moving toward Earth. Something that made even the advanced Zephyrians prepare to flee. Humanity's time as a simple curiosity in alien research was about to end. The news broke on a Monday morning. Without warning or explanation, the Zephyrians announced they would leave Earth within 7 days. Ambassador Nexor delivered the message via video to world leaders, his large eyes blinking rapidly in what humans now recognized as a sign of stress. "We thank Earth for its hospitality," Nexor said. "Our cultural exchange has been informative. We must now continue our journey." The world reacted with confusion and worry. Stock markets crashed. Religious groups proclaimed the end times. Government officials who had built their careers around alien relations suddenly faced unemployment. In the White House Situation Room, Frank Collins watched the president pace back and forth. "They can't just leave," she said. "We have agreements, treaties. They promised medical technology they haven't delivered yet." "I don't think they care about our treaties anymore," Frank said. "Something else is driving this decision." The president stopped pacing. "What do you know, Commander?" Frank hesitated, then decided complete honesty was necessary. For the past month, Dr. Maxwell and her team have been decoding fragments of Zephyrian communications. They've been discussing something approaching our solar system, something that frightens them. The president's face hardened. "And you didn't report this because?" "Because I needed to be sure before causing a global panic. And because we've been working on something." That afternoon, Frank took the president to MIT. Security guards kept watch as they entered Olivia's underground lab. The space had changed dramatically in the past month. The small metal cube had grown into a ring structure 10 feet across. Engineers and scientists worked around it, making adjustments and checking readings. Olivia greeted them with tired eyes and unwashed hair. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Madam President," she said, "thank you for coming." "Dr. Maxwell," the president replied, "Commander Collins tells me you've made a breakthrough." Olivia nodded and led them to a control station. "We call it the jump drive. It creates a connection between 2 points in space-time, allowing instant travel without crossing the space between." "Like teleportation?" the president asked. "Not exactly. Teleportation suggests disassembling and reassembling matter. We're creating a doorway. Step through here, exit there, with no time passing in between." Paul Hughes joined them, wiping grease from his hands. "We've successfully sent test objects to our lunar base and back. Yesterday we sent a monkey to orbit and returned it safely." The president raised her eyebrows. "You've been busy." "We had motivation," Frank said. He opened his laptop and showed her the latest decoded Zephyrian message. "Vrakashi Fleet entering system. Departure imminent." "Who or what are the Vrakashi?" the president asked. "We don't know," Olivia admitted. "But whatever they are, they terrify the Zephyrians." The president was silent for a moment. How soon could this technology be used to evacuate people if necessary? Paul and Olivia exchanged glances. "It's not designed for mass evacuation," Paul said. "The power requirements are enormous, and we can only maintain a connection for seconds at a time." "But it could be weaponized," Samantha Kelly added from her workstation. "If we can send objects, we can send explosives." The president nodded slowly. "Continue your work. I want daily reports. Commander Collins, you're coming with me to speak with Ambassador Nexor. Let's see if we can get some honest answers before they abandon us." 2 hours later, Frank and the president entered the nearly empty Zephyrian outpost. Crystal walls that once shimmered brightly now seemed dull. Most equipment had been removed. Only a handful of aliens remained, working quickly to pack up final items. Ambassador Nexor received them in a bare room. His skin had lost much of its luster. "Madam President," he said, "this is unexpected." "Cut the diplomatic garbage," the president said, her patience gone. "You're running away. We want to know what you're running from." Nexor's large eyes widened slightly. "I assure you our departure is routine." "The Vrakashi," Frank interrupted. "Who are they, and why do they frighten you?" Silence filled the room. Nexor stared at Frank, then at the president. "How do you know that name?" he finally asked. "We have our methods," the president said. "Now talk." Nexor seemed to deflate. "The Vrakashi are hunters. They have pursued our people across 17 star systems. We hope to find refuge in your system, hidden among a primitive species they would ignore." "Why are they hunting you?" Frank asked. "A dispute from long ago. Resources. Territory. It hardly matters now. They will not stop until every Zephyrian is eliminated." "And you were just going to leave without warning us?" The president's voice was cold. "Leave us to face these hunters unprepared?" Nexor had the grace to look ashamed. "We planned to depart quietly. The Vrakashi might not notice your civilization if we were gone. You are no threat to them. So you use us as cover, then abandon us when danger approaches," Frank said. "Some advanced civilization you turned out to be." Before Nexor could respond, an aide rushed into the room, speaking rapidly in the Zephyrian language. Nexor's skin paled to almost white. "What is it?" the president demanded. "The Vrakashi fleet has been detected crossing the orbit of Neptune," Nexor said. "They will reach Earth in 3 days. We must leave immediately." 2 days later, humanity watched as the crystal Zephyrian ships rose from Earth and formed a formation in orbit. Long-range telescopes showed another fleet approaching, dark angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. In orbit above Earth, a Vrakashi commander hailed the planet. His face appeared on screens worldwide, reptilian, with black scales and yellow eyes with vertical pupils. "People of Earth," the commander said in perfect English. "I am Supreme Hunter Kraz of the Vrakashi Dominion. The criminals you know as Zephyrians have taken refuge in your system. Surrender them immediately or face extinction alongside them." In Olivia's lab, the team watched the broadcast in silence. Then Samantha spoke up. "They didn't expect to find us here." Frank looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Look at the wording. The criminals you know as Zephyrians. They're surprised we've had contact. They expected to find a primitive world the Zephyrians were hiding on, not a civilization that's been in communication with them." Paul nodded. "That might give us an advantage. They don't know what we're capable of." Olivia turned to the jump drive, now modified and connected to a smaller portable device. "And thanks to our primitive approach to physics, we have something neither alien race expects." The president's voice came through on a secure line. "The Zephyrians are requesting asylum. The Vrakashi have given us 24 hours to comply with their demands." "What are your orders, Madam President?" Frank asked. "Prepare your team, Commander Collins. In 23 hours, we show these aliens that humans aren't as primitive as they thought." Night fell across the Nevada desert. Where the Zephyrian outpost once stood, now only empty crystal shells remained. Inside the largest structure, humans worked under bright lights. Military personnel moved equipment while scientists made adjustments to strange devices. Frank Collins stood at a makeshift command center, looking at screens showing the Vrakashi fleet in orbit. 23 massive ships, black against the stars, had positioned themselves around Earth. The largest ship, nearly 5 miles long, hung directly over North America. "They could have attacked already," Greg Patterson said, standing beside Frank. "Why give us time to prepare?" "Because they don't think we can prepare," Frank replied. "They see us as primitives, just like the Zephyrians did." Across the room, Olivia Maxwell worked with her team, connecting their jump drive to larger power sources. The device now stood on a mobile platform, its central ring glowing with blue energy. "Status report," Frank called out. Paul Hughes looked up from his work. Power levels at 85% and rising. We've modified 6 devices as requested. Each has enough charge for 3 jumps before needing to recharge. Samantha Kelly approached with a tablet. We've mapped the Vrakashi command ship. Based on energy readings, we've identified what we believe are their engine room, weapons systems, and command center. Frank nodded. Good work. The President is addressing the United Nations now. Once that's done, it's our turn. On screens around the world. The President stood before the UN General Assembly. Her face was calm, but her voice carried steel. Today humanity faces its first extraterrestrial threat, she said. The Vrakashi demand we surrender the Zephyrians who sought refuge in our system. If we refuse, they threaten our extinction. She paused, looking directly into the camera. The United Nations has voted unanimously. Earth will not surrender those who seek asylum on our world. We will not bow to threats of violence. We are prepared to defend our planet and all who peacefully reside within our system. In orbit aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Ambassador Nexer watched the broadcast with his council. Their skin had grown pale with fear. They doom themselves, one council member said. And us, with them. Nexer wasn't so sure. For 3 years he had studied humans. He had dismissed them as primitive because they hadn't followed the Zephyrian path of development. Now he wondered if that had been a mistake. They're adaptive, he said quietly. More adaptive than any species we've encountered. It doesn't matter, another council member said. The Vrakashi weapons will turn their cities to ash within hours. On the Vrakashi command ship, Supreme Hunter Kraz received the human response with amusement. These soft pink creatures dared to defy the Dominion. Prepare the first strike, he ordered. Target their largest population centers. Let's show them the price of protecting criminals. His second-in-command hesitated. Supreme Hunter, our scans show unusual energy readings from the abandoned Zephyrian outpost. The humans are gathering there. Kraz flicked his tongue dismissively. Probably crying to their Zephyrian friends for help. It doesn't matter. Begin the attack sequence. Back on Earth, Frank received word from the President. The Vrakashi are powering up weapons. It's time. Frank turned to the room full of soldiers and scientists. This is it, people. Operation Jumping Jack is go. Teams Alpha and Bravo, prepare for deployment. Olivia approached him, her face serious. The calculations are complete. We can create jump points inside their ships, but we'll need precise timing. That's why you're going with Alpha Team, Frank told her. You're the only one who can make adjustments on the fly. Olivia's eyes widened. I'm a scientist, not a soldier. Today, you're both, Frank said. He handed her a pistol. Just in case. 6 teams formed around 6 jump drives. Each team consisted of 4 soldiers and 1 scientist. Olivia stood with Alpha Team, checking her equipment one last time. Paul led Bravo Team. The other teams were headed by scientists who had worked on the project. Frank addressed them all. You know your targets. Get in, plant the devices, get out. The jump windows will only stay open for 8 seconds, so move fast. In orbit, Kraz was about to give the final order to fire when alarms blared across his ship. Intrusion, his security chief shouted. Multiple breaches throughout the ship. Across the Vrakashi fleet, chaos erupted. Where seconds before there had been empty corridors, now humans appeared rushing through their ships with purpose. On the command ship, Olivia emerged from a jump point with Alpha Team. They sprinted down a dark corridor following Samantha's map. Vrakashi crew members, tall reptilians with black scales, reacted with shock. They had never seen humans up close before. The soldiers fired stun weapons, dropping the aliens before they could respond. Olivia led the way to a massive chamber filled with glowing power conduits. This is it, she said. The main power distribution hub. While the soldiers stood guard, Olivia placed a small device on the central control panel. It was a modified version of her quantum technology, designed to create a very specific kind of disruption. Device planted, she reported through her communicator. Setting timer for 2 minutes. Across the fleet, other teams reported similar success. Frank's voice came through their earpieces. All teams return to jump points. Mission complete. As Olivia's team raced back to their extraction point, a massive Vrakashi blocked their path. The alien was nearly 8 feet tall, with armor and a weapon that hummed with energy. "Primitive vermin," he growled in English. "You dare invade a Dominion vessel?" The team's leader, a sergeant named Joe, stepped forward. "We're just leaving, actually." Before the Vrakashi could respond, Joe fired his stun weapon. The alien staggered but didn't fall. He raised his weapon. Olivia remembered the pistol Frank had given her. She pulled it out and fired 3 times. The Vrakashi roared in pain and surprise, then collapsed. "Nice shot, Doc," Joe said. Olivia stared at the fallen alien. "I was aiming for his leg." They reached the jump point just as it began to form. One by one, they leaped through, returning to Earth. On the Vrakashi command ship, Supreme Hunter Kraz raged at his crew. "Find the intruders, kill them all." His second-in-command approached nervously. "Supreme Hunter, the humans have planted devices throughout our fleet. Our sensors cannot identify them, but they're emitting energy signatures, similar to Zephyrian quantum technology." Kraz's yellow eyes narrowed. "Impossible. These primitives couldn't—" He never finished his sentence. Throughout the Vrakashi fleet, the devices activated simultaneously. They didn't explode. Instead, they created localized space-time distortions that interfered with the ship's systems. On the command ship, weapons turned themselves against the hull. Engines fired randomly, pushing ships out of formation. Navigation systems failed, sending vessels spinning off course. From Earth, Frank and the President watched as the mighty Vrakashi fleet fell into chaos. "It worked," Frank said with quiet amazement. Olivia's devices worked. The President allowed herself a small smile. "Now let's see if they're willing to talk." As the remaining teams returned from their missions, Olivia found Ambassador Nexor waiting with Frank. The Zephyrians' large eyes were wide with what might have been respect. "How did you do this?" Nexor asked. "This technology, it shouldn't be possible for your level of development." Olivia smiled tiredly. "You were so busy looking down at us, you never noticed we were finding our own path up." Morning dawned over the Nevada desert. The rising sun painted the crystal remains of the Zephyrian outpost in shades of gold and pink. Inside, human and Zephyrian leaders gathered around a large table. Military officers, scientists, and politicians sat on one side. Ambassador Nexor and 5 other Zephyrians sat on the other. Frank Collins studied the aliens. They looked different today. Their skin had regained some of its shimmer, and they held themselves with less fear. But there was something new in their large eyes when they looked at the humans: respect. The President entered the room, followed by Olivia Maxwell and her team. Everyone stood. "Please be seated," the President said. "We have much to discuss before the Vrakashi respond to our message." After the chaos caused by the human attack, the Vrakashi fleet had pulled back to the orbit of Mars. The President had sent them a simple message: "We are willing to negotiate. Any further aggression will be met with greater force." "Do you really think they'll negotiate?" Ambassador Nexor asked. "The Vrakashi have never shown mercy in their hunt. They've never faced humans before," Frank said simply. A young officer rushed into the room. "Madam President, we're receiving a transmission from the Vrakashi command ship." Screens lit up around the room. Supreme Hunter Kraz appeared, his reptilian face tight with anger. Burns marked one side of his face, and his ship's command center was dark behind him, running on emergency power. "Humans," he hissed. "Your attack was unexpected." The President stood straight. "As I said, we are willing to negotiate. The Zephyrians have requested asylum on Earth, and we have granted it." Kraz's vertical pupils narrowed. "The Zephyrians are criminals who stole technology from our ancestors. They must face justice." "What exactly did they steal?" Olivia asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Kraz seemed surprised by the question. "Quantum manipulation technology, the foundation of all advanced space travel. It was our discovery thousands of years ago." Nexor started to object, but Olivia raised her hand. "And this technology works by creating artificial gravity fields that bend space?" "Of course," Kraz said. There is no other way. Olivia smiled. Actually, there is. The technology we used against your fleet doesn't use gravity at all. We created quantum tunnels through space-time using principles we developed independently. Kraz stared at her. For the first time, the Supreme Hunter seemed uncertain. Impossible, he finally said. No primitive species could... Stop calling us primitive, Frank interrupted. That word has lost its meaning. We may not have thousands of years of space travel behind us, but we found solutions your people never considered. The president stepped forward. Here is our proposal, Supreme Hunter Kraz. The Zephyrians remain under Earth's protection. In exchange, both your peoples will share technology and knowledge with Earth. We will serve as neutral mediators in your ancient conflict. Kraz laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding. Why would the Dominion agree to this? Because, Frank said, our primitive approach to quantum physics gave us weapons that disabled your entire fleet. Imagine what we could do with more time to prepare. Silence filled the room. The threat was clear. Kraz's scaled face was unreadable for a long moment. Then he spoke. I will consult with the Dominion Council. Expect our answer within one rotation of your planet. The screen went dark. The next day, 3 ships approached Earth, 1 Vrakashi, and 2 Zephyrian. They landed near the Crystal. Outpost and representatives from both alien species met with human leaders. The agreement was simple but revolutionary. Earth would become a neutral zone where both species could exist without conflict. In exchange, humans would gain access to both alien technologies, adapted to human understanding. As the formal signing concluded, Frank found Olivia standing alone, watching the sunset through a crystal wall. You know, Frank said, when the Zephyrians first arrived, I never imagined we'd end up here. Olivia smiled. Mediating peace between 2 ancient alien civilizations? Not exactly what I planned either. Ambassador Nexor asked me something interesting earlier, Frank said. He wanted to know how humans managed to develop such different approaches to physics, why we find solutions their people never considered. What? Did you tell him? I said it's because we're too stubborn to accept limitations. When someone tells us something is impossible, we just try harder to prove them wrong. They watched as Zephyrian and Vrakashi representatives cautiously interacted, centuries of hatred giving way to uncertain cooperation. It won't be easy, Olivia said. They've been enemies for thousands of years. If primitive humans can figure out peace, maybe they can too, Frank replied with a smile. 1 month later, Frank stood on the observation deck of the USS Defiance, Earth's first true starship. Through the viewport, he could see Earth growing smaller as they accelerated away from the planet. The ship didn't use Zephyrian crystal technology or Vrakashi engines. Instead, it was powered by a larger version of Olivia's jump drive, now capable of making controlled leaps across vast distances of space. Olivia joined him at the viewport. As chief science officer, she had designed much of the ship's systems. Captain Collins, she said with a playful salute. Course is set for Alpha Centauri. Jump drive is charged and ready. Frank nodded. Nervous? Terrified, she admitted. But excited too. We'll be the first humans to see another star up close. The ship's crew worked at their stations around them. Some were military, others civilian scientists. There were even 2 Zephyrians and a Vrakashi serving as observers and advisors. It's strange, Frank said quietly. 3 months ago, the Zephyrians thought we were too primitive to join them among the stars. Now we're leading the way to a new kind of exploration. Through the communication system, a message came from Earth. It was the president's voice, addressing not just the Defiance, but the entire world. Today marks humanity's true step into the galaxy, not as followers or students of older civilizations, but as innovators and peacemakers. The USS Defiance carries with it humanity's greatest strengths, our creativity, our adaptability, and our determination to find our own path forward. As the message concluded, Frank gave the order they had all been waiting for. Engage, jump, drive. The stars outside the viewport seemed to stretch and blur, For a brief moment, space itself folded around the ship. Then, in an instant, Earth's solar system vanished, replaced by new stars and the red glow of Alpha Centauri. The crew cheered. Humans had taken their first real step into the galaxy, not by following the path of more advanced aliens, but by finding their own unique way forward. Ambassador Nexor stood quietly in a corner of the bridge, watching these once primitive humans celebrate their achievement. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to update the Zephyrian definition of advanced civilization. Sometimes the most primitive approach led to the most profound innovations.